Welcome back to You Must Be Woken, the podcast where we have honest and sometimes tough conversations on the topic of diversity and inclusion with her, Dawn Hurst.
And him, Craig Richards. Today's episode, as you may have guessed, is a little different. We're unashamedly stealing Spotify's Wrapped concept and serving up the best of 2025. A highlights reel of the stories and topics that have made us laugh, squirm, and think twice.
And it's not just the year we're reviewing either. It's also been 1 year of the You Must Be Woken podcast. So
Yeah!
1 whole year of us challenging assumptions, sparking debate, and, keeping us a bit of a work in progress as we go along the way as well, Dawn, I suppose, as well.
Absolutely. So hopefully you'll join us as we look back at the moments that have defined 2025 and the moments that defined You Must Be Woking. Because if 2025 taught us anything, it's that being woke is still a work in progress.
It really is.
So let's set some context. When we look back at 2025, inclusion wasn't just a buzzword, it was a battleground and a breakthrough. We saw organisations reframing DEI in less politically charged terms, aligning it more closely with their ESG goals and experimenting with AI to reduce bias in hiring.
Yeah, and at the same time, there was pushback, budget cuts, shrinking DEI teams, and the all-important, what we would class as the all-important call for to prove measurable impact in this space as well. It's been a bit messy, it's been a bit contentious, and we've been right in the middle of it all, which is where we want to be, right? Dawn? That's exactly where we want to be.
Exactly, sleeves up.
But before we jump into doing what we're calling some awards from you or I, let's have a quick catch up. What you've been up to?
So I've had a little bit of sun and I have been doing lots of work travel and doing lots of good stuff and generally getting my new house ready for Christmas.
Lush. And we should point out this episode is likely to be going out in between Christmas and New Year. So we're just pre-Christmas. Hence why you can see I've got a little Santa decoration here, got my Christmas jumper on, Dawn's antlers are waving in the wind. We're trying to get in the festive spirit, even if we're not quite there yet. But hopefully by the time you're listening to this episode, you'll be in between your Christmas and New Year break. And you will be enjoying the festive period, whatever you get up to. And we're joining you for your festive pants, or maybe just giving you a break from all the kids and all the families so you can just have an hour to yourselves with us unwrapping the year as it happens. But yeah, what have I been up to? Just busy, Dawn. It's been chaotic. I was saying to you earlier on in the just before we started, I don't like mince pies. So I was thinking, oh, I feel like we should have some nibbles. And then I was thinking it's too early in the day for wine. So I brought a chocolate biscuit and that's what I'm
Oh,
eating as we go through.
bless your heart. Well, I thought I'd be clever and I bought some peanuts and then they made me cough before we came on air. So I was like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen,
Oh.
before we get into some of the awards and things, we should probably talk a little bit about what the podcast has achieved in this last year as well. Can you believe it's been a whole year?
That's frightening, really frightening.
I know. Well, in a year, we have managed to release 24 episodes of the podcast. We have gained listeners in 41 countries. Can you believe that? 41
Wow,
countries.
that's
United
amazing.
States, the Netherlands, Australia, Hong Kong, Russia. People in Russia are listening to us talk about this stuff. Germany, Brazil, Malaysia, Ecuador. The list goes on and on and on. We've seen some incredible progress. So, yeah, I'm really pleased about that.
It's incredible, isn't it? Out of curiosity, this is an interesting fact. Which state in the USA do you think we've got the most listeners?
I've no idea. Go on, tell me.
Virginia, closely
Really?
followed by Nevada. Yeah. Perhaps
Ah,
we need to do another live episode from Las Vegas to celebrate our American listeners. I'm sure
I'm
we'd have
definitely
some
up for
honest
that.
conversations on that side of the pond. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm definitely up for a bit of that. I'm in. Let's go. Let's do it. Anybody want to sponsor us? You know where we are. We'll take us out. Brilliant.
And across all of our platforms, so TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, wherever people found us, we've clocked up over 360,000 views and listens. So that's quite an achievement in a year.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, really, to be fair? I mean, who'd have thought it, Dawn, all across those platforms? And I guess that's almost a seamless link, isn't it, into where we're going to start today, which is to just look at some of our most viral moments of the year. Who'd have thought we'd have been viral talking about diversity and inclusion, Dawn, right? Should we
Love it.
start with the sheep?
Oh, the sheep, the bloody sheep.
Oh, God.
Oh, so sometimes a sheep is just a bloody sheep, which was episode 6, where we explored inclusive language, and somebody went on a bit of a rant. But there's nothing new there then.
Yeah, I was a bit, yeah, I did go on a bit of a rant and I don't apologize for it because it's now on TikTok. It's led the way and it's had nearly 160,000 views.
Oh,
My little rant on TikTok with over 700 comments, people commenting on what I had to say as well, and nearly 5,000 likes as well. So that was a nice compliment.
oh, the comments were brilliant, actually. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking to read them, isn't it? But Andy C75 told us that they stopped it in their daughter's school and changed it to rainbow sheep, and they laughed at the teacher. Pixie said their son's school changed it to woolly sheep. Grumpy old person called it wokeism at its finest and wanted us to not start and cause trouble for Jack and Jill. And Bad Chi Bai asked the question we were all thinking: have the sheep complained?
Wow, quite right too, as well. Quite right. For those of you that haven't listened to that episode, this was where Dawn and I were talking about inclusive language. And we talked about the nursery rhyme, Baa Baa Black Sheep, having its lyrics changed so that it wasn't, because it was seen as racist or having connections to the slave trade. I won't do the spoiler. If you want to go back and have a listen, we highly recommend it. It was a good one as well. And then there was the infamous unicorn pussy clip as well.
Absolutely,
Oh,
yes. From our
cringe.
very first episode, we kicked off gently. Is it time to cancel culture? You shared the story of your nephew's classmate who requested to be called unicorn pussy, and the teacher obliged.
Yeah, and that one on TikTok racked up nearly 55,000 views, hundreds of likes and comments, a couple of which. So Russell said, stick him on the kitchen side and say, okay, don't move or talk. Fiona LB commented that her 14-year-old son got detention for keeping his coat on in class because there was no heating and he was freezing, but this is happening. Sally-Ann Burgess said, the world has gone mad. It's ridiculous. We couldn't agree more, Shelly-Ann.
What was really interesting was we had quite a few comments saying we'd made that up. It just didn't happen.
Yeah. So a few people have said to me as well, actually subsequently have said, is that really true? And I can unequivocally state it is absolutely 100% true. I even asked my sister to try and ask the parent if they wanted to come on and talk about it, and they declined. She declined to ask them, I think was more the point.
Oh, I love that. We've also had massive engagement on the shorts, the YouTube shorts and the Instagram reels. One of our most watched Instagram reels was from our episode with the brilliant Victoria Harding, Ginger Unhinged, from our In the Spotlight series. And what did she insist that you shouted out, Craig?
It was very good. I had to shout out the word vulva and the word vagina live on our podcast, which was an experience for me. But actually, I actually learned quite a lot in that episode that I never knew before. Not just about vaginas and vulvas, but also about the menopause and the impact that has on women in the workplace as well. So it was a really fun episode, and I really loved talking to her about it. She spoke quite frankly, didn't she, about her different experiences with the menopause. And what I really loved was her authenticity when she talked about how workplaces can help women going through the menopause and those kind of things. But the clip that really seemed to resonate with everybody, and I know you loved this one as well, was her theory about burning her fucks.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, you loved that bit, didn't you? You were like, I'm so doing that.
I'm doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
I've shared that with loads of people.
I'm sure you have. We can't really talk about this year's achievements, though, without talking about the fact that we wrote a book.
My God, we did. Woke is
Woo!
broke, but we can fix it. Can you believe 2025 was the year we made that happen?
I know it was mad, wasn't it? It was a labor of love for quite a long time, wasn't it? Well, how are you feeling now about the process, though? What was the hardest thing? Would you do it again? What's your kind of feeling?
Yeah, it was interesting. I met some old friends at the weekend. They asked me a similar question. I mean, I have to say you were brilliant in the whole process. And, I've shared I wasn't too well this year, and you really stepped up for me in that. Um, I think in terms of writing, I would like to do another one. I think we should, but I think we should have a cottage somewhere beautiful so that we haven't got to do the day job as well as write, because I think that would be spectacular. But
You've just been inspired by Tim Barber in our episode in the Spotlight, haven't you? When he said he went on a writing retreat and Dawn was like,
yeah,
we should have done
can
that.
we do it? Actually, it was Love Actually last night, and Colin Firth in these little cottages.
Oh, and he falls in love with the maid, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Is that
it
right?
was
Oh, it's so
beautiful.
sweet. So maybe I'll fall in love with the maid or a hot pool boy if not a maid.
Yeah, I'd like to. That would be quite nice, wouldn't it? That was my wish for 2026. There we go. So
Yeah.
the whole process was demanding. It was fascinating. We just recorded the audiobook, and I found that process just brilliant. So yeah, huge thank you to you though.
It
And
was my pleasure and loved it.
what was your favourite bit, and what do you hope we do with the book in the next 6 months?
I guess for me, the purpose behind it really was why we did it. So the process was actually quite difficult, and for anybody writing a book, don't underestimate how hard it can be. It was difficult, but it became quite personal in the end.
Mm,
We wanted to be quite provocative, for obvious reasons, but actually what people might misunderstand from the provocative title is our intention for the book to be a bit of a turning point for this
mm,
topic, right? Because there are some really important things that we need to protect in an organization. But I think we both felt that this topic was being ridiculed and was being taken in a direction that it wasn't sustainable. And
mm,
so, yes, we've been quite provocative in the title and some of the stories, but the core purpose of it is actually to help organizations and to help leaders anchor themselves into a strategy or a process of inclusion, which is baked in common sense and helps them navigate this topic in a way that's comfortable for them rather than uncomfortable for them, and one that they can actually stand behind, because actually there is some real good intent in the work that people are trying to do in this space, even if they are doing it wrong or going in the wrong directions. So I think the purpose was the most important thing for me. And then the second most important thing was I just didn't want it to be too businessy. I didn't want it to be too,
mm.
you read some business books and they're a bit boring and you're just kind of reading them on your sun lounger
Yeah.
and falling asleep. I didn't want ours to do that.
Mm,
Um, I wanted it to be baked in stories and real life and to make it meaningful for people. So far, the reviews have been really positive in that sense.
mm,
I'm sure it's not going to please everybody, but it will
mm.
100% hopefully resonate with the people it was intended for, which is leaders. And if they haven't read it yet, or they're going to read it on their next holiday, enjoy it, right? And you haven't got to read every chapter. Choose the ones that are important to you. We also wrote it in a way that you could navigate the book in a way that was meaningful for you as well. So hopefully it was a book that just allows people to put a bit of common sense back to this topic and allow leaders to navigate it in a more sensible way. So yeah, that was the purpose behind it, and I truly still believe in that purpose.
Loved it. And we both looked fabulous at launch.
We did look fabulous. Yeah, we did. It was really good. And the event was so fun, wasn't it? Lots of
Mm,
clients, lots of people there. And, we've had some really lovely feedback from people after the event as well. And we've had a few clients reach out to us and say, actually, we've got a few problems. We think you might be able to help with us.
mm,
So, you know what? Like, we will always have an unpaid for coffee, like conversation with anybody that just wants to talk about um, some of the things that they need to do. So, that's our gift to you at Christmas. If you want an
over.
unscripted conversation and just pick our brains on a few things, the offer is there and you're very welcome at any point in time because the book was never about making money for us. It was always about changing this sector and bringing a bit of common sense back. So we hope it's done that, if nothing else.
Love
Okay,
that.
right. Enough patting ourselves on the back. As much as we've enjoyed that, it's been lovely. Let's get into what we're really here for, which
Excuse me.
is help our listeners and each other understand what was our top moments of the year. So we're calling them awards. They're not quite awards, but they're more moments and that we think defined the diversity and inclusion space during 2025. So why don't you kick us off, Dawn?
Okay, so let's start with something positive, albeit quite difficult, this one.
Hmm.
Craig, who would you crown as the most inclusive politician of 2025 and why? What actions or policies earn them that?
Yeah, so I found this really hard
Mm,
actually to find a politician that I wanted to put in it. And I created myself a little shortlist, as you would expect. And unfortunately, it's an all male shortlist. So I
mm,
apologies about that. But there was no female politicians that stood out for me this year, which I'm a bit disappointed by. I think that's a sign of the times, though. I think a lot of politicians are hiding right now. And I'll come back to that
mm,
a little bit later on. But I've got three on my shortlist. So in number three is a politician called Rob Jetten. He is about to be crowned as the Netherlands' first openly gay prime minister. He's currently in
nice.
coalition talks. And the reason I chose Rob Jetten is purely for that representation. He's not the first European gay leader. So he's not the first, but he's the first in the Netherlands. And I followed his election campaign a little bit with interest. As you know, we've got some clients in the Netherlands, so I'm always quite interested in what goes on out there. And yeah, I just think it's great for representation. So I chose him. He didn't make my finalist. The next one was Zoran Mandani, who is the mayor elect of New York City. Again, I just caveat this by saying I actually don't agree with a lot of his policies. I'm not,
Mm, mm,
I don't lean to a socialist standing, which I think he would consider himself very socialist. But what I really liked about Mandani was in a world that feels really polarized right now. He stood up and said, "This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And if you want to join me on that, come and join me." And he was utterly and unashamedly inclusive in his approach too. And he's willing to fight and argue and talk about trans issues as well as everything else when most politicians are hiding from that topic right now. He is unashamedly who he is. So good for him. And I'll watch with lots of interest and how he does over the coming years as the mayor of New York. Because I think he's in for a bit of a tough ride.
mm.
But actually, the person I'm crowning politician of the year is in the UK, and it's a chap called Wes Streeting. And the
Ah,
reason I chose Wes, he doesn't get everything right, but actually, when it came to the trans debate, he was the first politician to break through with a bit of common sense. At one point in the year, leaders were going on TV and being asked to define what a woman was and were just being tied up in complete and utter knots. And
mm,
they were making themselves and everybody else look utterly ridiculous. And Wes Streeting went on, I think it was the radio, but then subsequently the TV, and he broke the nonsense by saying a woman has a vagina. And it was quite crass and it was quite
mm,
blunt,
mm,
but it did the trick because it stopped all of the nonsense that people were trying to navigate and not tie themselves up in knots and subsequently doing that. So I'm crowning Wes for that reason, he also brought a bit of sense back to the debate around children and healthcare and medications around this issue as well when he became the health secretary. So I've given it to Wes for those reasons only, but I'm giving him a caveat by saying, I'm watching you, Mr. Streeting, to see what else you can do or what else you are doing, because at the moment, your government is not covering themselves in glory in these issues. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. What about you?
Mm.
Sorry, I went on a bit there, but what about you? Who's your
No,
politician of the year?
I did similar. I did a league table. I started with 5 and then whittled it down. I won't
We're
go
just
through
too
them all,
similar.
but yeah, absolutely. And I've done a plus and minus scoring system because I'm
I'm
just
surprised you haven't done a scale of.
scale of 1 to 10. I have. I wanted to, and this is slightly controversial, I wanted to move away from simple representation because there's some obvious candidates for that. And within that list, there were some female for me. It could be somebody like Sam Carling, who's our first 21st century MP in the UK, for example, representing a much younger voter than previously. But I wanted to go into actual impact, unsurprisingly. And for me, actually, it was an MP from your neck of the woods. And it was Kanishka Naranya, who was very, very instrumental in a piece of online security policy which prevented some of the hate crimes against minority groups, which was very, very interesting. So that was mine purely based on impact, not policy.
Love that. Love that. Oh, I would expect nothing less from you. Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
Love it. Okay, so Namisha, did you say her name was Namisha, Kanishka, and Wes? You are our politicians of the year, and
Absolutely.
we'll keep a watching brief on what you do next.
Love that.
Okay, so this one's a tough one because I found this a struggle really, but I wanted to ask what's your best podcast guest of the year? So for the viewers who may or may not be aware, during the year we introduced a kind of spin-off show to the You Must Be Woken podcast called In the Spotlight, where we brought guests into the studio with us and we were just having some really honest conversations with them about all kinds of topics, but related to inclusion. So we had everybody from Ginge, who we've talked about, talking about the menopause, to construction CEO talking about the talent in the construction sector, and everything in between. So we thought it would be right to say which one of our guests was our favourite for the year. So what did you have, Dawn?
Yeah, both of the ones that you have just mentioned, John Wilkinson, Ginger and Hinged, were in my shortlist, definitely. But for me, there can only be one winner. And apologies to all of our guests because they've all been amazing. But Kate Nash, talking about disability for me, Kate is the godmother of disability in my mind. And I thought her episode was so impactful.
Yeah, and you'll not be surprised to hear Kate was my choice too. I thought Ginge and Hinged was brilliant.
She was
Making me shout out
fabulous.
vulva and vagina on the podcast, something I never thought I
Excuse me.
would do. Really, really good. Zoe Trigwell, we should give a mention to as well, that
Yeah.
inspiring young female entrepreneur. John Wilkinson, the CEO from the construction company BAM, really true, authentic voice talking about kind of the challenges in the construction sector and what he's trying to do to shift the dial and encourage talent into that industry. Really, really good. But yeah, Kate Nash, I just love her passion for working with and championing people with disabilities, always pushing the envelope on inclusion, always
Yeah.
focusing on the impact that it has. And actually, she came to our podcast. She set us right on something that we were struggling with. And yeah, I love her. So yeah, Kate was my vote too. So congratulations, Kate.
Yay, Kate. That's fabulous.
Okay. Is this you or me doing this one? I think it's me, isn't
I think
it?
it's
Sorry.
you.
It's me again. Right. Okay. Award number 3 then is our media moment of the year. And we're moving from celebration to analysis this time then, Dawn. So what would you say has been the most standout media moment of the year for you?
Well, On trying to think about this one, I could probably speak for an hour, if I'm honest, on some pros and cons, but I know you've given me a minute. Um, uh, uh, for me, there are a few things. So, if we talk about some of the movies that have been released this year, particularly focusing on neurodiversity, that's been big for me. I think the Eurovision this year was really interesting, and what some of the debates and discussions that
Mhm.
created around disability, that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Um, Barbie releasing a diabetic Barbie, I thought was quite cool. But the one for me, and this is quite personal, I guess, is the attitude to size within the fashion weeks, London, New York, Milan, etc. But also taking that a stage further this year, because there's been some ebb and flow into older models, disabled models, and lots of non-binary representation. And on such a public stage, the debate and discussion that created for me was a key media moment in people who probably are not as familiar with this topic.
Love that. Oh, well, no, I wouldn't have thought of that. So that's a really nice one. I love that.
Mm.
Sorry,
What
for those of
about
you
you?
listening,
You
I'm
eating
eating
your
sweets
biscuit?
and chocolate. Yeah, no, stuffing away. So apologies. Um, really like that. Yeah, so I think there was quite a few for me again, films and movies. I loved Riot Women. I thought it was really, really good. Um, we talked about that last time, didn't we?
Mm.
I absolutely love Heartstopper. Charlie and Nick. Oh God, I wish I
Yeah.
was alive. I wish that was when I was in school. Just so amazing. We might have a surprise on that show in the new year for our eagle-eyed listeners as well. I'll keep you posted.
Mm.
But I think for me, the media moment of the year has to go to Stephen Graham and his TV show Adolescence.
Yeah.
Um, Having a young, about to be teenage boy at home, it really shook me and made me think very differently about my behavior, his online presence, everything about that program was really quite impactful on me as a single parent of a teenage boy. Um, and then I think about the impact it's had afterwards as well, right? So we talked about it in a previous episode this year, and we talked about the impact and how powerful the show was. But actually, it's gone on to have continued what we call ripple impact in our world, right? So you do
Mm.
something here, but actually the ripple effect is being felt long afterwards. And there's been a subsequent campaign set up called Letters to My Boy, with prominent figures writing letters to their children about the future and their lives. And it's just been so powerful. And even the UK Prime Minister did a public letter to my son recently, talking about his experience and how proud he was of his son and stuff. I think it really shifted the dial for men and young men in particular this year. So my 100%, I give this award to Stephen Graham and his partner for writing this show. Um, Profound impact for me. So yeah, brilliant,
Yeah.
loved it.
Brilliant. Good choice. Good choice. So let's go on to a negative for a second and talk about
No, don't sound like us.
D&I fails. Um, so could be a
Nobody would
media
expect anything less from us, would they, this year, to talk about fails,
Oh,
Dawn? They would be like,
that's
you have to
funny.
do a fail.
So, could be media moments. Remember that one of our most watched YouTube shorts was discussing that Jaguar advert. So, my question, Craig, what's been the most surprising D&I fail of 2025, whether it be an organisation, a campaign, or public figure that completely missed the mark?
Yeah, it's a really good question, this one, isn't it? Because I was like, oh, and I'm not a fan of
Excuse me.
often, that's right. I'm not a fan of often shaming organizations. We genuinely believe when we work with organizations, we do so quietly in the background because it's not, excuse me, not about us, it's about them. Um, so I'm not always a big fan of naming and shaming organizations. And we took a slightly different view of that this year. particularly in light of the DEI rollback that seemed to be happening. And we called a few organizations out and said, look, you need to, and if the ones particularly that were rolling back, and we said, good, because if you can't stand behind your work and you're not confident to talk about it, then you should be rolling it back, right? So, slightly different stance for us, although not overly provocative in that space. But there was a few moments for me that have kind of happened this year that I've thought, oh, that was quite powerful. So there's been lots of lawsuits in the US over exclusivity this year. So, for example, there was a legal challenge against the Fearless Fund, which is a venture capital firm specifically supporting startups funded by Black women. Ultimately, so they were being taken to court over discriminatory actions. We've seen the same with Donald Trump and the colleges and the intakes of students from minority backgrounds and stuff. There was another one where a retail giant Target was faced a lawsuit from its own shareholders because they claimed that the company had defrauded them by concealing the financial risks associated with social and diversity policies that they were taking, and linking their policies then to the drop in sales and stock price, etc., following the backlash over D&I and LGBT issues this year. So, two big topics, but I'm going with the fail of the year is going to the UK government for me.
Well,
And this relates to the absolute abject failure to respond to the Supreme Court ruling in April around trans rights. And I say this with lots of love and affection, right? Because it's a really difficult topic. But the Supreme Court made their ruling in April. We're now in December, right, of that same year, and nothing. Organizations, charitable groups, businesses, public sector institutions, individuals, community groups are all affected by that ruling. And there's not been a single line of guidance from the UK government as a result of that ruling. And it's because, quite frankly, they're scared of it. They don't know what they're doing and they're scared of this topic. And I think that is an abject failure of leadership, and they should be ashamed of themselves, because I just think they should have by now come out and given people some reassurance and some guidance about what they would. And they keep talking about, oh, well, we're waiting for this from the HR. No, I don't care who you're waiting it from. You're the minister, you're the government. You should have taken some action by now. It's been too long. You've left it too long. And only last week we saw in the press the story of the WI who having to change their policies as a result of the Supreme Court guidance, and therefore say, if you're a trans woman now, you can no longer be part of the WI. They're not going to revoke your membership. They're just not going to renew it. And then recently we've seen the story of a lady called Rowena Purdy, who has been a trans woman for 10 years since her transition. She's been a member of the WI in all of that time for 10 years. And now she will no longer be welcome to go as a member to events organized by the WI because the government have failed to give them adequate guidance. So they have now had to say, I'm sorry, you can't be a member anymore. And I just think it is utterly disgusting that the government haven't done this. It's not acceptable. These are people's lives we're talking about, and it's just not fair.
Well, I couldn't
Sorry.
agree more. It was mine too. It was absolutely mine
Was
too.
it?
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
ranted.
And again, I'd analysed 8 different and come up with that was the most, disgraceful. Not just on that particular legislation as well. It's fallen short on harassment legislation, sexual harassment legislation, but also the culture within the parties. And that's when I was analysing how I'd answer this question. It doesn't just apply to the UK. The culture within our internal party is a far cry from what we'd expect.
Yeah. And look, I want to caveat this by saying it is a difficult topic, right? So, when we're talking about trans athletes competing against females in sport, it's difficult, right? When we're talking about male people entering female only spaces, and you use the example of the chap in Scotland that got sent to a female prison, et cetera, right? These are very, very difficult topics. And women have spent their whole lives often fighting for their rights and their safe spaces. But that is not an excuse for government to absolve themselves of the responsibility to respond. And if you
Mm.
can't respond and you can't show leadership in times like this, well, then you shouldn't be in power, and you should not have stood for Parliament, because it's at times like this we need leadership, and I think the UK government have failed to lead. And I just think it's a complete and utter shame, because, I don't want women's rights to be taken away, but there are individuals involved in this, and we have to give them some help and guidance.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Okay, right. This next one then is a big one. It's the Uncomfortable Truth Award. And I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this one. So, what is the single most difficult conversation the industry had to face this year? I can't even say it now. The Uncomfortable Truth Award. Come on, Dawn. Who are you giving it to?
So there wasn't a lot of competition for this one, if I'm being really honest, because it's this whole, and I can name 100 clients, this backtracking on DEI, generally overall, rebranding DEI to be culture, forgetting about the people, the financial and the commercial impact of what this is all about. So for me, the Uncomfortable Truth Award is really.
Yeah, love it. I agree. And do you know what I put? Our book. Because essentially that's what we did, right? We called it out. It was
Yeah.
uncomfortable. People might not like some of what we've had to say, particularly people in our space who do some of the things. And look, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It was uncomfortable, and so I've awarded it to our book, because it was uncomfortable. And whether you like what Farage and Trump and those are saying or not is irrelevant here. If you're doing something, you should be able to stand behind it, and if you can, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And that, in essence, is what our book is saying. So
Mm.
we don't want you to not do inclusion. We absolutely want you to focus on inclusion, and we give you a roadmap for doing that. But ultimately, if you can't stand behind what you're doing, then you should perhaps stop. So I awarded it to our book.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
We won another award. Fabulous.
Love that.
But I think you make a really important point. Whatever your politics are, we can't ignore the fact that we're marching for rights in this country, whatever your denomination is. And that shouldn't be overlooked when we think about these things.
Yeah, definitely. Love it. Okay. I'm very conscious. I feel like this script's been flipped the wrong way around for us today, but I'm doing the next one as well by the looks of things as well. I don't know why.
Yeah, it looks like
So
that.
finally, let's end the awards bit on a really positive note then. So what should we be looking for 2026? What will be the 2026 D&I trend, Dawn, do you think?
Yeah, I think finally we can celebrate that the trend is moving to measuring impact, not data, but actually measuring return and impact. And hopefully there will be new legislation supporting that it's no longer about stuff and about the impact you're making. And hopefully procurement teams will demand that from their suppliers and all these good things. But that's my prediction for 2026, that we'll finally move to what we as a business have been talking about for 20 years, measuring the impact of this stuff. What about you?
Yeah, yeah. I hope that's the case. I holding my fingers crossed for that to be the situation. So I've done a bit of a pessimistic but positive look to 2026. So I think the pessimistic side of me says the topic next year will be culture. And the reason the topic will be culture is because people will just rebadge what they're doing and call it culture. It isn't, by the way, just to be clear. It's very different. But they'll rebadge it, and therefore we'll just go around the doom loop again. So that's a one to look out for and hopefully avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And then my positive one was the same as yours, that people actually start measuring what they're doing in this space, and measure for impact so that they can truly make a difference in the inclusion space and do that well. And I think, if organizations want to look at culture, we talked about this on the previous episode, in our Woke News episode, where we looked at actually institutions and some of the cultural challenges that they're going through right now. That's wider than a D&I lens, actually, that they become bigger. So if you're going to truly look at culture, you need to do it well, and you need some investment and you need some expertise to do that. So I hope that if organizations do go down the culture road, then they're going down it with their eyes open and doing the right things. And we're not just rebadging inclusion as culture next year. But ultimately, impact for me. That's what I'm predicting for 2026.
Love that. Love that. Same
And
page.
that's it. That's our awards. That's our Christmas festive
Oh,
wrap up of 2025. That was
what a
fun.
year it's been. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good year. So what are you saying then, Dawn? What's your end on a positive note? What's your positive thought of 2025?
My general positive thought is what a great year it's been. A huge thank you to all our listeners across those 41 countries and
Yeah.
360,000 views. You've made this first year of doing this incredible. It was something I was really skeptical about doing. And I know I'm the sidekick, but I really enjoy doing this. So,
You're
huge thank
you're
you.
definitely not a sidekick. And who'd have thought it when I said to you a year ago, let's do a podcast, and you were like, oh, that you'd be sat here wearing antlers a year later and loving it, right? Who'd have thought it? But yeah, no, I love that. And
Absolutely.
we should also say a big, huge thank you to all of our clients across the world.
Absolutely.
We love the opportunity you give us to work with your organizations. We will always protect you and your brands as best we can, and we'll always do that in really good faith. We see our work with you as partnership. So thank you very much for your custom in 2025, and for working with us, because we appreciate the trust that you put in us as we do that. And to all of our listeners who aren't clients, thank you. Yeah, we've really loved doing this pod. We've really loved spending some time with you. One of my clients, who is an ex-client now, actually isn't a client, said to me they were off work poorly during the summer, and they listened to all of our episodes while they were off poorly. And she said it was like having us in her kitchen with her. And
Oh,
I was like, oh, how lovely is that? That's really lovely. So thank you to everybody that's been listening and spreading the word about our podcast over the last 12 months. We've thoroughly enjoyed working with you all, because that's what we see this as, a bit of a working partnership as well. So here's to 2026 and continuing to make inclusion at the heart of every organization, but linking that to performance, productivity, and great places to do business.
absolutely. So it's bye from me. Happy New Year.
And bye from me. See you in 2026, where we'll be having even more honest conversations. Thanks for watching and listening to You Must Be Woking, the podcast that cuts through the noise for all things diversity and inclusion. We pride ourselves on having honest and sometimes tough conversations. So if you liked our discussions and content today, please do hit the follow, like, and subscribe buttons. It really helps us to reach more listeners. And if you're feeling even more generous, why not leave us a review? It really is the best way for us to grow and help our content reach even more people. You can also find us on all social media platforms at You Must Be Woking, or search the hashtag YMBWoking, where we continue the conversation, including answering more of your questions. See you soon.